South Africa is suffering from a severe case of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is what happens when you feel powerless over a very long period of time. The South African citizen has learned to be helpless and dependent on the government. And nothing shows the learned helplessness of South Africa more than the elections.
South Africans will vote on Wednesday in the country's hotly contested general election. Polls suggest that for the first time in 30 years, the governing African National Congress, or ANC, could lose the majority vote. The ANC is the party that broke apartheid rule under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. But a crumbling economy, high unemployment, and corruption allegations have already prompted thousands of South Africans living abroad to cast their ballots in overseas voting.
27 million people are eligible to vote and are registered. 16 million cast their votes. If the other 10 million or some portion of that came in to vote and voted for anyone but the ANC, and I would add probably not the MK and the EFF or the ATM, but let's just say anyone but the ANC, this country would change overnight.
Let's now show you a graphic representation of, some of the data that has been coming through. We're going to start with the ANC. The ANC so far has garnered 40% of the votes, and that's about 6,119,000 and I suppose 354 votes that have been garnered by the ANC.
The South African population has learned to be helpless to such an extent that the very thing that could so easily help them is available to them. Every 4 years and every 2 years, if you want to be technical, and they have the overwhelming majority and ability to do it because these are grown adults. They are already registered. And if 2 million of those people came in, they could swing the whole thing. If a party of conservatives came in and got 3 to 5 million votes, this thing is over. This country's different overnight.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.
And the only thing stopping it is obviously not the ANC's willingness to cheat yet, because they lost this election and got 40% in 2024, and they did not fuss, they did not fight, they did not try to cheat. As a matter of fact, they did the mature thing, went into a coalition with the party the South Africans would have preferred, not the MK, not the EFF, not the ATM or the Progressive Bloc. They went in with their enemies, knowing that they would take flack from the SACP. They went into that coalition, what is best for South Africa and for keeping them in power, and what South Africans could live with was an alliance between the ANC and the DA. So they're not willing to cheat. So what's the problem then?
The other big story, well, counting is underway in what many are calling a historic election in South Africa, with more than half of the ballots counted. The ruling African National Congress is leading with just 40% of the national vote 2 days after the country voted in the national elections. Now, according to the latest updates from the Election Commission, the Democratic Alliance, the country's principal opposition party, is currently in the second place, followed by the MK party, which is a new party led by former President Jacob Zuma, and the EFF, which is currently the third biggest party in parliament. Final results of the polls are expected by Sunday, and according to initial results, the ruling African National Congress is losing their majority.
The people who can change this are the South African citizens. Between 10 and 11 million of them did not vote this time and stay home a lot of the time. And those very people are some of the poorest people in this country, living off social grants, sewage flowing in their streets. Their children go to bed hungry and have done so for years. And all those people have to do is show up. We now have a course available for boys between the ages of 10 and 18. It's called the Men of the Bible course. We discuss manhood, masculinity, and becoming a man through the lens of 12 men from the Bible, like Joseph, like Adam, like Samson. And we take them through the stories and the lives of these men. And then we pull out some negative lessons, some positive lessons, and some notable doctrinal and theological points, while pulling out one major lesson that the boys can take away. Check out this course if you know a young man between the ages of 10 and 18. And I'm telling you, 500,000 or 100,000 of those people showing up and voting for anyone but the ANC changes the whole picture. Because look at how much the picture has changed with the ANC dropping to 40%, the emergence of the MK and the DA being in the GNU. Already you've seen a lot of changes and ministers becoming very active, trying to address crime. Ramaphosa going overseas seeking investment in a serious way and not in the fake way with his investment conferences.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
This is learned helplessness, my friend. This is what happens when you have a social grant mind and you've raised your children on social grants. You become a professional victim. This used to be a pioneering place. This is not the time to be weak. This is not the time to be quaking in your boots, to learn how to be helpless, sitting down, crying on TV, hoping ENCA gives you 5 minutes of their time.
In South Africa, with almost all results from this week's election now in, the African National Congress, the oldest liberation movement on the African continent, has lost its outright majority for the first time in 30 years, since the end of apartheid. Many voters blamed the ANC for high levels of crime and corruption and failures in the supply of basic necessities such as water and electricity. And so begins a new era in South African politics as President Cyril Ramaphosa, who himself helped negotiate the end of apartheid, begins the search for coalition partners.
If the 10 to 11 million people came out to vote, had an impact on the 16 million that have already voted, this country could change overnight. Problem is that people have learned to be helpless. This is what happens when hope is deferred. It makes the heart sick.
It had been a slow and steady day, and then this. The former president, now the head of the upstart MK party, an unexpected challenge to the ANC. Already reeling from voter anger over economic mismanagement and corruption scandals.
Jacob Zuma has created quite a stir here. He's made a rock star entrance. His party came third with an unexpectedly strong showing. Take a lot of votes away from the ANC.
But that's not an excuse to let the land of your fathers and your forefathers go down the drain and your children's future go down the drain right in front of you. A saying, to clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. Karl Barth. It's time to do something. Pray and vote. Pray and vote. And if those 10 million people came out and voted, this country could change overnight. I recommend people start to pray and vote. And if God be with us, a conservative government will come in between 3 to 8 million votes in 2029, and this country will change and never be the same again. No more pit latrines, no more 50 people being murdered a day, and no more sewage in the streets, and a future for the children. We now have a course on Teachable. It's for boys between the ages of 10 and 18, about 12 men from the Bible, where we teach about manhood, masculinity, and becoming a man. Check it out. Thank you for listening. If you dare, buy us a coffee. The link is in the description.